Welcome to Story Station, Season 2, Episode 6. In this episode, you can listen to 2 Australian stories. The first story is titled, Bahloo the Moon and the Daens. What happens when some mortal men defy the great moon? Listen to this story to find out. The second story is titled, Deereeree the Wagtail and the Rainbow. Bibbee, Deereeree's neighbor, must go to great lengths to convince Deereeree to marry him. Do you think he'll succeed? Hope you enjoy it! I'll read a story called Bahloo the Moon and the Daens. Bahloo the Moon looked down at the earth one night, when his light was shining quite brightly, to see if anyone was moving. When the earth people were all asleep, was the time he chose for playing with his 3 dogs. He called them dogs, but the earth people called them snakes, the death adder, the black snake, and the tiger snake. As he looked down on the earth, with his 3 dogs beside him, Bahloo saw about a dozen Daens, or men, crossing a street. He called to them, saying, "Stop! I want you to carry my dogs across that creek." But the fellows, though they liked Bahloo well, did not like his dogs, for sometimes when he had brought these dogs to play on the earth, they had bitten not only the earth dogs, but their masters too. And the poison left by the bites had killed those bitten. So the men said, "No, Bahloo, we are too frightened. Your dogs might bite us. They are not like our dogs, whose bite would not kill us." Bahloo said, "If you do what I ask you, when you die you shall come to life again, not die, and always stay where you are put when you are dead. See this piece of bark. If I throw it into the water," he threw a piece of bark into the creek. "See, it comes to the top again and floats. That is what would happen to you if you would do what I ask you. First under when you die, then up again at once. If you will not take my dogs over, you foolish men, you will die like this." And he threw a stone into the creek, which sank to the bottom. "You will be like that stone, and never rise again." But the men said, "We cannot do it, Bahloo. We are too afraid of your dogs." "I will come down and carry them over myself to show you that they are quite safe and harmless." And down he came, the black snake coiled around one arm, the tiger snake round the other, and the death adder on his shoulder, coiled towards his neck. He carried them over. When he had crossed the creek, he picked up a big stone and threw it into the water, saying, "Now you cowardly men, you would not do what I, Bahloo, asked you to do, and so forever you have lost the chance of rising again after you die. You will just stay where you are put, like that stone under the water, and grow, as it does, to be part of the earth. If you had done what I asked you, you could have died as often as I died, and have come to life as often as I come to life. But now you will only be men while you live, and bones when you are dead." Bahloo looked so cross, and the 3 snakes hissed so fiercely, that the fellows were very glad to see them disappear from their sight behind the trees. The men had always been afraid of Bahloo's dogs, but now they hated them, and they said, "If we could get them away from Bahloo, we would be able to kill them." And thenceforth, whenever they saw a snake alone, they killed it. But Bahloo only sent more, for he said, "As long as there are men, there shall be snakes to remind them that they would not do what I ask them." The end. I hope you enjoyed this story. The next story begins in a moment. I'll read a story called Deereeree the Wagtail and the Rainbow. Deereeree was a widow and lived in a camp alone with her 4 little girls. One day, Bibbee came and made a camp not far from hers. Deereeree was frightened of him and too frightened to go to sleep. All night she used to watch his camp, and if she heard a sound, she would cry aloud, "Deereeree! Yeah, yeah, Deereeree!" Sometimes she would be calling out nearly all night. In the morning, Bibbee would come over to her camp and ask her what was the matter, that she had called out so in the night. She told him that she thought she heard someone walking about, and was afraid, for she was alone with her 4 little girls. He told her that she ought not to be afraid, with all her children around her. But night after night she sat up crying, "Yeah, yeah, Deereeree, Deereeree." At last Bibbee said, "If you are so frightened, marry me and live in my camp. I will take care of you." But Deereeree said she did not want to marry. So night after night was to be heard her plaintive cry. And again, Bibbee pressed her to share his camp and marry him, but she always refused. The more she refused, the more he wished to marry her, and he wondered how he could induce her to change her mind. At last he thought of a plan of surprising her into giving her consent. He set to work and made a beautiful, many-colored arch, which, when it was made, he called Deereeree, and he placed it right across the sky, reaching from one side of the earth to the other. When the rainbow was firmly placed in the sky, and showing out in all its brilliancy of many colors as a roadway from the earth to the stars, Bibbee went into his camp to wait. When Deereeree looked up at the sky and saw the wonderful rainbow, she thought something dreadful was going to happen, and was terribly frightened. In her fear she gathered her children together and fled with them to Bibbee's camp for protection. Bibbee proudly told her that he had made the rainbow just to show how strong he was, and how safe she would be if she married him. But if she would not, she would see what terrible things he would make to come on the earth. Not just a harmless and beautiful roadway across the heavens, but things that would burst from the earth and destroy it. So, by working on her mixed feelings of fear of his prowess and admiration of his skill, Bibbee gained his desire, and Deereeree married him. And when long afterwards they died, Deereeree was changed into the little Willy Wagtail, who may be heard through the stillness of the summer nights, crying her plaintive wail of "Deereeree, yeah, yeah, Deereeree." And Bibbee was changed into the woodpecker, or the climbing tree bird, who is always running up trees, as if he wanted to be building other ways to the heavens other than the famous roadway of his Deereeree, the building which had won him his wife. The end. I hope you enjoyed this story. Thank you for listening to Story Station. We are adding stories as frequently as possible, so check back often. We would love to hear your feedback and any questions you may have. Thank you.